what spooks me out personally, even more than the dark star that's talked about, and this is a little bit more along the lines of my research over the past 6 years at least. I used to get into this a lot more with nanotechnology, mind control combined with nanotechnologies, and it was all basically a hypothesis associated with AI interface. You know, I talk about DNA breaking down into a quad code system, how there's sacred geometry found throughout the universe, how quantum physics, there's really no finite point. It just gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And if space is infinite, then size doesn't really matter. In a sense, how could one thing be bigger than the other in infinite space? What he gets into is somebody that he actually used to work with that helped build over 200 HARP-like facilities around the world. The information he talks about with the artificial interface, the nanotechnologies combined with the chemtrails, they're not actually nano-goblins in the sense of being full-on nano-robots at first, but the way they combine with the DNA and other elements, they can essentially turn into these micro-antennas. The geoengineering of the planet, we talk about the radiation levels increasing, how and why it feels more intense on your skin when the sun reaches the skin, even though the temperatures are the same. The Anunnaki, we get in deep into the Anunnaki interface, who they are, how they've been talked about in different biblical prophecies and scriptures with different names, different terms. How Terrell also feels that over the next certain amount of years, depending on when these events absolutely do take place, in his opinion, he thinks that they will. He thinks it's going to be like the movie 2012, and California is a very bad place to be, in his opinion. Magna waves, the heliosphere shrinking, the reversing magnetosphere, what's going to happen around May 20th, 2017, connecting numbers, earthquakes, earth changes seamlessly and efficiently. This might be the podcast that changes your mind on the possibility of a binary star that causes huge events, and many consider this being God's reset button. He also talks about where the earth change warning signs will be if you're in the U.S. and what to look for. So make sure to listen to that. Is the president of the Council of Foreign Relations actually the enforcer of U.S. control in Denver? What about the Bilderberg Group, the House of Foreign Relations, the House of Rothschild? Is the Georgia Guidestones 500 million people, no more than that at any given time on the planet of Earth, a precursor to the Black Star, Nemesis, Wormwood, Planet X, Nibiru? What's going to happen? Is it even worth living through these cataclysms? This is discussed with Terrell as well as Jay here today. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/clandestine Time Lord. If you become a contributing member at leakproject.com, you'll get access to exclusive content, and contributions greatly help Leak Project. Pick up a high-resolution decal today for $10 as well. High-quality vinyl. We've got several other really cool decals coming up here soon. Check them out on our website, leakproject.com. Also, check out Terrell's website once again, terrell03.com. He's also on YouTube. Just look up The Dark Star. And Jay Campbell, trtrevolution.com. The Game Changer with testosterone replacement therapy. Enjoy the presentation. This is Rex Bear. Question everything and be the change you want to see.
Guys, what is going on? It is Jay Campbell from trtrevolution.com and the author of the definitive testosterone replacement therapy manual. And of course, I'm joined by my awesome friend, Rex Bear of the Leak Project. This is the episode, Decoders of Truth, episode 14. And we're joined tonight by a very special guest. It is Terrell of Terrell03.com. And Terrell is a very, very prominent guy in the, I guess you would call it Black Star orbital passage theory of an inbound body. And we're going to let him talk a lot about that tonight. So again, we're very, very excited, both Rex and I. Terrell, how are you, buddy? Welcome to the show.
Doing very good. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So let's just get right into it. So I want, Rex and I are going to do our job of kind of going back and forth and having questions for Terrell. And Terrell, you probably know Rex interviews a lot of guys like you who have stories about Nibiru, Gerald Clark, Marshall Masters, Steve Olson, all these different guys out there. So he's, really excited to interview you. So let's just talk a little bit about your background first. How did you get into this?
I'm actually a Bible guy. I'm more of a theologian, a Bible scholar, a student, and worked with Scripture for decades. Thought that would be my life's work. Wrote my book in 2005, The Mystery Explained. You can get it free at terralo3.com. And then once that was completed, the burden was on my heart to know the truth about 9/11. So that was a 5-year investigation. And then wrote that book in 2010. And you can get that free also, The 9/11 Truth, Exposing the Cheney Rumsfeld Black Operation. And then Allen and Comet was discovered. And after keywording Scripture and the 9/11 Commission Report, Arden County After Action Report, then and developing these skills, then the documentation came out about the Ellen and Comet, discovered December 10th, 2010. Ellen and backwards is 9/11. And the perihelion date of this supposed comet was 9/11/2011, exactly 10 years to the day after the 9/11 attacks. So I just wrote the book, and then here comes this story. So it was the documentation relating to Ellen that really got me into it. I joined 2 astronomy groups, want to know more, educate myself on astronomy more. And then Minister Armour Bosich came out with his paper to Cornell, April 11th. He traced this Ellen and Comet was included in his paper that he'd been working on for a very long time. And he traced the seismic pattern going back to 1965, which obviously didn't happen because of a comet. It just so happens this celestial object, this object gravitational magnetic anomaly that I've been tracking now for the last 6 years, was in Leo at the same time as the Ellen and Comet. And I believe that Ellen and Comet is a lettered agency psyop that they ran to desensitize people, very similar to the comet ISON. And so I've been engaged in the documentation, and then we picked up our project astronomer, Don, and worked with a large research group for years, and it just kind of grabbed me. And I'm going to be on this project until it's finally resolved. There's definitely something coming, It's causing the earth changes. It's causing everything from global warming to Jupiter's liquefying core, to the volcanism you're seeing, the earthquakes, and the quake pattern that we're seeing, the magnetopause reversals that we've been having. We're predicting them now in advance because we have enough baseline data. And that's really how I got into the investigation.
So let me ask you a real quick question. So you're saying, if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying that Ellen and ISON are both psyops, and they're both a cover story for the same thing, which is the inbound object, which you call.
No, I'm not saying that. Ellen passed on through. The seismic pattern continued. So the reason, the way that they use these psyops is to desensitize the population. So you've heard Nibiru, Planet X, the lettered agencies are running both sides of that, and everybody's hearing it so much that they're becoming desensitized to it. So the plan is to put everybody to sleep and to make them look at Hillary and Trump and whatever's the reruns are running on the television, rather than waking up about what's coming from space.
Okay, so if I'm understanding you correctly, again, I apologize. So you're saying that Ellen was a comet, and it did pass through. So
ISON was a comet. Ellen was not a comet. Just try to find a picture of it.
Okay, I got you. So Ellen was this black star, but ISON was a comet.
That's right. Okay. But there's a lot of similarities. They were both discovered by Russians. The first hyperbolic comet discovered by a Russian was Elenin, and the second one would have been ISON, except for they ran out of time. There's a 72-hour time limit for them to get corroboration from other astronomers, and they missed it by about 2 hours of identifying this thing as a comet. So that's why it was named after the network, the ISON network. Turned out to be a dirty snowball, but James McCanney ran with that, and it was a mini solar system. If you remember, both of them were mini solar systems. If you look up the keywording for the documentation on both of them, and too many similarities for them not to be connected. And it was another desensitizing op that the lettered agencies ran. If you notice, McCanney left Planet X movement shortly after that. So he was used as a vessel for a little while, and then he, like Lucas that came before him, if you've been watching John Moore, listening to John Moore, then it was Lucas, 2011.
I remember Lucas.
Yeah.
I interviewed him back in the day.
And he was really big into it. He came to Revolution Radio where I do my work. And then he was replaced by James McCanney, and I expected them to replace McCanney with someone else, a little higher level NASA type guy, and that didn't happen. But both of those were psyops used to desensitize the population in my mind.
Let me jump in real quick, because I've often thought that the desensitization process started way before even 2003, because if you play Cry Wolf long enough, eventually no one's going to believe it. Even if they do believe it, they just don't want to hear it anymore because they've heard it for so long. So like you said, it's this desensitization process. But let me ask you this. As far as the charts and stuff that you're going to share with us here, And I had a whole bunch of earthquake reports the other day that somebody sent in. I'm talking dozens around the West Coast, all the way up into Alaska. And then you've got the Ring of Fire, obviously. Are we going to get to a point to where you think that it's going to be similar to the film 2012 on the West Coast?
Absolutely. It's going to happen. The dominoes are already stacked against the U.S. West Coast and the entire United States. After that, after Yellowstone pops, then you have lava tubes running over to the New Madrid, and New Madrid's going to pop. If you look at the Scallion maps of the future, look at the Navy maps of the future, you'll see a giant hole out there where you guys live, and you're going to see there's an inland gulf from where Louisiana used to be all the way up to the Great Lakes. So the United States is going to be cut in two by what's about to happen.
I've seen those maps, and I know that even Edgar Casey had basically a vision where he was in one of his trances, and he had a similar map to the released Navy maps. And a lot of people that were in the military, higher in, top brass, etc., officers ended up moving out towards that location that's looked at as safer. And definitely you want to be at a high elevation if something like that happens. But where are we at now? I mean, are there some charts essentially that kind of show where the dark star is at? Because so many people are thinking what they take a picture of is Planet X or Nibiru or Wormwood or these multiple names, red Kachina, blue Kachina, etc.
Right, and that's a lot of the propaganda. There are no pictures of the black star. There's no pictures of the black star. You cannot photograph what is a black hole. This thing is more like a black hole than any known celestial object.
So it's like sucking stuff into another dimension?
No, I'm not going to say that. What we're dealing with is
that sounds crazy awesome.
This is a remnant body. This is our sun's much larger binary twin that burned out long time ago. And when it imploded, then it created this remnant body that comes to the inner solar system. It came to the inner solar system in the days of Noah, and it came in the days of Moses, and it's coming now to begin the day of the Lord, and then it's going to come again at the end of the age to fulfill Matthew 24 and Revelation. The sun's going to turn dark. The moon's not going to give forth its light. The earth is going to stagger like a drunkard. And the U.S. West Coast is in the bullseye of where the dominoes are already stacked against the United States.
So, wow, this is very somber, especially living in Southern California. But so what is your take then on, obviously all the other, researchers, again, Gerald Clark, Zechariah Sitchin, Michael Tellinger, folks like that, who talk about this, inbound object, they refer to it as Nibiru, Wormwood, whatever, Planet X, and the beings or the species that supposedly come with it, the Anunnaki. What is your belief in the Anunnaki?
I believe the aliens are all around us. I believe they're God's custodians. You asked me earlier what they were going to do with the nuclear power plants. Who's going to clean up the mess? That's who's going to clean up the mess. This is the same people that took Elijah to heaven in a chariot of fire in 2 Kings chapter 2, start at verse 10. Those people are all around us right now, but they're not going to interfere. But once the black star passes through, they're the ones that are going to clean up the mess.
So when you say clean up the mess, I'm sorry if I'm cutting you off, Rex. Go ahead and stop me here a second. But when you say clean up the mess, are you saying pick up the pieces after millions, if not billions of people are done?
Yes, that's what they're going to do. And it's going to start the day of the Lord. It doesn't matter who dies. Remember that Christ's first miracle was to turn water into wine. Elijah's first miracle was to raise the dead. It doesn't matter who dies. We're moving into something that's new. That's what this black star is. It's God's reset button. And we're dividing times. It divides times from times. If you notice, before Noah, people lived much longer. Then afterwards, they lived shorter. After Moses, so the number of years that man lives is divided by times. And these times, all of a sudden, when this thing leaves, people are going to start to live to be 1,000 years again. So we're actually standing on the edge, the threshold of something very glorious.
Go ahead, Rex.
I would like to know what your take is on some dates that people could expect to see that type of stuff happen on a global scale, similar to the film 2012 again.
Okay, we know the month that it's going to happen. We know that it's going to be in the month of May because we know the black star. If you'd like me to show you the solar system, are you guys still looking at my desktop?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, if you'd like for me to show you the solar system, then I can answer some of those questions.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Please do.
Okay, so it looks like my settings are not set. Let's set them so you can see the constellations. And then we want you to see how we can already see the planets. Okay, whenever this thing was discovered, it was in the Leo constellation. And there's a lot of data that we're basing what I'm telling you on. So this is where Ellen was discovered, and this is where the black star was in 2010. This thing is moving left in the orbit diagram just below the ecliptic plane. So we're looking at the plane right now, going up and down. It's just below the ecliptic plane. The reason they're building these telescopes at the South Pole is so that when the Earth bobs, see it's a little bit above the plane right now. When it's down below the plane, then they can look across below all the debris that's on the plane to get a better look at the thing that's coming from space. But where it came from actually is, from what I can tell, just about at the Belt of Orion, back over this way, and it's coming along this way. It's moving in prograde fashion, which means the same direction as the rest of the planets, and the Belt of Orion down here. It's going to be above that, but it came from Orion, and it's coming across this way. I picked it up in Leo 6 years ago, and we've been predicting the seismic patterns. My investigation started in January of 2011, and we predicted Fukushima with only 2 months of data within 4 days. The next year, it was Guerrero, when the black star was just about here. And we predicted that within 2 days. And the reason that it's happening is because the Earth, as it comes around in orbit, like so, and when it passes between the stars, then that's when we have our big seismic events. We're also at our nearest point to the star. So, for example, this year, we made the predictions, and when the black star, we know when we're in outside orbit position. We know whenever the magnetic portal connection between the black star and the Earth is at its longest. That's when we have the least number of earthquakes. And then whenever the Earth is moving towards the black star, just like this, it's in Libra now. So in the month of April, we had all these earthquake events, and we had 9 new volcanic eruptions. We had 7, 8, 9, and 9 volcanic weekly new events in the month of April. But whenever the Earth is around here in August, we only had 1 and 2. And the reason is because the Earth was very close to the black star. There's a magnetic portal connection. If you don't know what that is, you can go to my website. Lots of data on it. There's a link you can click. It's like an umbilical cord running from the Earth to the sun. And inside of that magnetic portal connection, there are 2 primary kinds of conduits, active conduits and passive conduits. The passive conduits lie on the outside. The internal conduits are the active ones. And the Earth receives the most amount of electromagnetism through that magnetic portal connection when we're the closest to the sun. That's on January the 3rd or the 4th. And then when we moved to the summer side of orbit, then we received less. The same principles apply for the black star. It's out here. It's connected to our sun through a magnetic portal connection. So you know solar cycle 24 flatlined in late 2011. They said we had a double peak in 2015, which we did not. And now it's void of sunspots, which it shouldn't be. The reason is because the black star is siphoning the energy from the sun, and it's redirecting it to the other planets through a secondary set of magnetic portal connections. That's why Jupiter is changing. That's why they sent the Juno probe there. That's why you can't see the spot on Jupiter anymore, because the complexion's changing. The things, the ethane, the methane, the solids in the core are liquefying. They're actually being changed directly into gas, and it is causing Jupiter to grow. Its upper atmosphere is changing, its complexion. Similarly with Mars, when Mars came by in 2012, Mars was right behind, and I can change the date here and show you. Let's go back to 2012. Right here, let's go to March. And you'll see Mars is directly behind the Earth here.
So Terrell, did you build this software right here?
Oh, no, this is a solar system scope. You can get it for free on the internet.
Oh, wow, okay.
Okay, so the black star is behind Mars on March the 12th, 2012. I've got it on March the 10th, but March the 12th. Very important day in my investigation, because not only did Mars develop a dust storm on the nighttime side of that's why it's a mystery Martian dust storm, because scientists today don't know what caused it.
That was a nasty storm too, by the way.
It's supposed to be caused by the solar wind. It's supposed to be happening on this side, not on the nighttime side. But this storm started on March the 12th, 2012, at the same time that Earth magnetosphere turned around. The bow shock faces the sun. The tail is supposed to point this way. It blows in the solar wind. For 28 hours, our magnetosphere turned around, and the bow shock faced the Leo constellation, the same constellation where my black star was. Big, strong evidence. And it happened just before the Guerrero event that we predicted within 2 days. So here comes the Earth. It's getting ready to pass between the black star and the sun, and it's pulling 2 magnetic portal connections with it, the one from the Earth to the sun, the one from the black star to the Earth, and it crossed the star-to-star magnetic portal connection. As it did, it caused magnetic portal connection convergence. This angle was 45-degree angle back here. But when we started moving between the two, that angle got smaller and smaller, and the convergence of those portal connections causes portal-to-portal cross-firing. It's sprite formation, the biggest lightning bolts that you can imagine between these portal connections. That creates highly charged ionic clouds being given direction between the converging portals. So this big giant wave was pushed through towards the sun, causes solar flares. We had giant solar flares leading up to this too. And the fact that this happened just before Guerrero, the Guerrero event happened just after it. It happened 8 days after it. Then that tells us that we definitely had the magnetic portal connection. We had the solar flares and the the magnetosphere turning around. That tells us that we have a source of subatomic particles here that is more powerful than the solar wind, that could not possibly originate outside of the pressure shock of our solar system. It's impossible. The influence had to be very nearby in order to fight the solar wind at just 1 astronomical unit from the sun. So then in 2016, using that data, we were able to predict what happened. Let's go to 2016. And we were able to predict the Martian dust storms. If I can get this to go the right way, here we go. In April. Here's Mars again. Behind the Earth. I'm getting double feedback from
Echo.
Okay, so here comes the Earth again like this. The magnetosphere collapsed again. The reason that it's characterized as a collapse rather than a reversal is because NASA turned off the feed. The Department of Homeland Security actually turned off the feed after only 2 hours. We had 28 hours of data last time. We only had 2 this time. Martian dust storm started just prior. The Earth's magnetosphere collapsed again because the black star had moved. You see where we are now? This is the Virgo constellation. Before it was in Leo. So not only this, we have a seismic pattern that I could show you from this recent newsletter. We've been tracking the earthquakes weekly, and we know when they're going to go up and when they're going to go down, when we're going to have the big uptick and when we're going to have the lull period. And we're in an uptick period, a mini lull inside of an uptick period right now, if you listen to my report. So this is the kind of data. Let's take this down just for a minute and look at the newsletter. This is year over year seismic values. They're extremely low at this point because something is coming. The patterns that we're looking at says that there is something coming, and it's kind of looking in your direction. But here's an example. This O in the chart means we're at outside orbit position. That's at that 90-degree angle position that I told you about. Look at how low the values are. 2.5 to 4 magnitude earthquakes, sub 200 is very rare. Look down the chart. Look down the chart. You can barely see a 100 something. At outside orbit position is when it happens. Back in 2011, this value was 146. The next year was 164. The next year is 176. It's been migrating upwards, but very slowly. Then we have a jolt value. The highest value of the year, sometimes this second week, is because of the way that Earth turns around in orbit to start moving towards the black star, and then we get a sudden jolt of electromagnetism. That gives us that jolt value. This happens. It's very predictable in the chart. This jolt value here, 5, 6 magnitude earthquakes, this happens like clockwork. In the 5th week, not the fifth week of the year, see, this doesn't start on January the 1st. This starts when we get to outside orbit position. So the chart for the next year begins almost 2 weeks later. Here we are at outside orbit position. There was a little bit of anomaly. This value was a little bit high here to start this year. But whenever you look at all the earthquake activity that we're having when we get between the 2 stars, here we're having 11 of the 6 magnitude earthquakes, 4 7s, 5 7s right here together. Whenever we have these longer areas, we have none at all. If you're anywhere near outside orbit position, then that's the way that it is. We have almost nothing as far as earthquake activity. So we were able to predict far in advance because we know the solar system. We know where we are in the solar system, going around the sun, and when we're moving towards the black star. And whenever we come around to get the outside orbit position over here, we move around and swing around in orbit, which we just went through. The black star is moving directly towards us. That means the magnetic portal connection is shortening on 2 times a year, and it's lengthening 2 times a year. And we have identified the seismic pattern that tells us this is caused by a celestial object. The same celestial object that turned Earth's magnetosphere around, the same celestial object that I've been tracking for the last 6 years.
Wow.
Let me jump in real quick.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Jay. I appreciate it. So, I mean, this is some great data, and much appreciated you bringing this to the table for people to look at some of the science behind the claims. I mean, this is good information. Now, as far as Fukushima goes, I am under the impression that whether or not there was a real earthquake that happened naturally or because of this dark star, like you referred to, a lot of people that speculate there was more involved, like explosions that went off, etc. But that could be a whole other episode. But what I'm wondering is, with this thing being kind of like a black hole in essence, and the numbers that you put together with this, is there any truth to the 3,600-year orbit?
Well, if you take the time between Noah and Moses and the time to today, and then the time from now to the end of the age, there is a period that lasts a little more than 3,000 years. So whether it's exactly 3,600 years, whether Sitchin's work is right or not, really doesn't matter to me. There is something that has come before. There is historical precedent for it. and there's scriptural evidence for it. The earth is supposed to shake like a drunkard. The sun is supposed to turn dark. Have you noticed the coronal holes on the sun are getting bigger and bigger?
Well, Rex and I definitely noticed that there are definitely radiation changes. The sun's rays are different. If the intensity of them is higher, I mean, again, I can only speak for most of the time that I'm living in Southern California, but Rex measures the radiation, solar radiation, and it's gone up, right? Rex, in the last few years, like dramatically, it's gone up.
I'm glad you brought that up because I'm looking at the levels right now and they're lower than they usually are. Right now it's at 0.09, but typically it's been hanging out over 0.1 up to 0.14 microsieverts per hour. And although that doesn't sound like it's high, and it's not, the typical levels when I first picked this watch up back in 2013, and it's been recalibrated since, the levels were literally at 0.06, 0.07. They rarely spiked, rarely went above that. And now I haven't seen it that low more than a couple of times in this area over the past couple of years. Now, traveling the country extensively for a couple of years from 2013 to 2015, I noticed certain states had much higher levels. Even if you go to southern Texas, like around Big Bend National Park, in the park itself, the levels almost triple. Atlanta, they were really high. But you can definitely tell a difference with the actual radiation, and I'm wondering if it's because of all the geoengineering that's going on, or if it is this dark star, if that's emitting extra radiation as well.
Well, before you answer that, isn't the geoengineering, great question, Rex, isn't the geoengineering because of this?
First, let's get to that second. First, you're not measuring solar output whenever you're using your device. You're measuring Earth's ability to defend itself against solar radiation. So you have solar output, which is diminishing. The solar output is actually weaker now. The heliosphere around our solar system has shrunk 25% in 10 years. The problem is Earth magnetosphere is weakening 10 times faster than they previously thought. So what you're seeing is Earth magnetosphere fluctuating, and that is letting more of the solar rays get in, but the solar rays are actually weaker now, and they're getting weaker and weaker and weaker. So they're both getting weak. You're measuring what is coming through the magnetosphere that is fluctuating.
Well, then, so what does that mean then?
Yeah.
What it means, well, you're not going to get a real accurate, you're not going to measure solar output using your device. You're going to measure what's come through the magnetosphere. So you're measuring magnetosphere integrity in your area, and it's fluctuating over our heads all the time. So it's that value is going to fluctuate. But the sun is going to continue reducing activity. Your X-ray flux, your radio flux values are 1/3 what they should be, anywhere near solar maximum. That happened in 2011 at the end. They expected solar cycle 24 to be bigger than 23, but then, and it was moving up just like it was going to in 2011, but then it flatlined in 2011, and the output values dropped to 1/3 of what they were for the previous cycle. So the sun is going to sleep, is what it is, and there's plenty of information on the internet about how the sun is going to sleep. That's why it has this blank of sunspots right now as we're talking. So whenever you're going to get your highest readings, if you were outside the atmosphere, then that would be during solar maximum, whenever you see all the sunspots and the sun is getting ready to switch poles.
Let me jump in just real quick if I can, Terrell. What would you say then is causing the increase in radiation? Because this is a consistent level. I mean, it's a military grade Geiger counter. I don't know exactly all the different types of radiation that it picks up, but everybody that I talk to, just about that I've asked this question, can definitely tell a difference in the feeling of the sun when it hits their skin. I mean, just go outside. I love the sun, man. I mean, if you give me a rock to lay on outside, it's like a hot rock. I'll be like a lizard there for a minute. I can enjoy it, but it's so intense now. I don't even really like being out in the sun for that long. So what's caused the increase in your opinion?
Well, part of what you're getting in California is likely has to do.
I'm not in California.
Oh, you're not?
No, I'm in Texas. San Antonio, Texas.
Well, I agree. I feel the same.
San Antonio.
The winds blow, and there's a lot of radiation out there. So if you're measuring with a Geiger counter, then what's been in the oceans from Fukushima and what's in the clouds that's coming from that direction, from the prevailing winds, it's likely that you're getting some of that, and that is going to want to pool up in places when it rains, then it comes down the creek bed, then it's going to want to build up in certain areas. So if you get close to those funnel areas, places where that water passes through, then you're probably going to get higher readings than if you move away.
So what you're saying then, Terrell, and I don't mean to cut you off, Rex, if you're going to say something, is
no,
if you're in Southern California like I am, and I'm a good 30, between 20, I guess 30 miles or so from the beach, I would be feeling through the barometric pressure, the what do you call it, the offshore winds and trow or whatever it's called, the inversion layer. I would be feeling somewhat some of the radiation from Fukushima.
I'd say that's very possible, but the life on that's lower in the food chain, the reptiles, the amphibians, they're going to be affected first. and the reproductive cycles where it's going to show up. So in the embryos. So you're going to see those things way before it's going to affect you. It would affect your offspring, your fertilized egg and your wife before it's ever going to affect you. So we're too old to be affected by the amount of radiation that we're going to get from something like that. So if you're measuring, I mean, if you're looking up at the sun and it feels hotter, then there's a lot of variables involved there too, from humidity to the time of the day, the angle of the sun. So you kind of lost me there. I thought you were measuring the solar rays rather than using a Geiger counter and getting radiation.
Well, I think it's more along the lines of the atmosphere itself is probably affected by all these chemical trails and what you're feeling on your skin, because it does feel more intense. It does feel more like you're being radiated versus just heat. It doesn't really feel hotter. It just feels more intense on the skin, and that's the overall phenomenon. So it's got to have something to do with the atmosphere, I would think, or essentially if it's this binary star that you're talking about, even though it's a dead star, essentially, I wonder if there's some type of radiation as well that it emits in conjunction with our own sun.
Well, back to your first question, Rex. I want Terrell to answer that. So back to the geoengineering. Obviously, he's insinuating it right now. Is that being done by the elites to prevent us from seeing this inbound body, or is there a bigger picture to it?
There's a bigger picture to it because you can't see it.
Right, you can't see it.
A well-qualified astronomer with an observatory class telescope with infrared equipment, and we know where it is, and we know we can't see it. What they're doing, you're talking about Rothschild, Gates, you're talking about Rothschild, Rockefeller, Gates, eugenics is what you're talking about. And what they're spraying you with is nanotechnology.
Right.
They're using,
Neil talks about that. They're
freaking nano goblins.
They're nanoparticulates, right?
Right. Well, they're actually components. They can't spray you with actual nanobot, but they spray you with the components. Then you breathe them. Many of them are going to get on your skin, but your skin is a natural defense against anything like that. You shed your skin way quicker than any of these little guys can do anything. And you're only dealing with components anyway. But what happens is, it was explained to me by Billy Hayes, who was one of my lead researchers in Terrell's research group for a long time. He built 200 of the HARP facilities around the world. He knows all this stuff. He educated me on it. These components, you breathe them in and then you regurgitate them. And it's your lungs don't like them. It's just like dust or anything else. It comes up, but then you swallow it. Whenever you swallow it, it goes into your stomach and hits the acid-rich environment. That's whenever the crystallization begins. These things grow to a predetermined diameter, and then on the corners of these crystals, that's where they grows these appendages, the legs for mobility and antennae for communication. And then that's where HARP comes in, because the carrier wave, which is now space-based, the old analog system was done away with in 2013. Now it's all digitized and it's all space-based. They're maintaining a carrier wave around our planet so that artificial intelligence can multi-frequency on top of that wave, and it's like broadband. So he's creating many other frequencies, and he's communicating with the nanos in your body. That's what the spraying is about, and they're wanting to upgrade it. What the scientists have been doing is trying to break the 5 nanometer barrier so that artificial intelligence can tell the nanos in your body to reassemble amino acids to viruses. If you remember the H1N1 scare, this was a super duper biological weapon. The problem was 2 missing amino acids. That's all they had to do was reconnect, and they had a super strain. That was a dry run for what's coming in the future. When the elite fail-safe plan is initiated, there's going to be a contagion, and it's going to be artificial intelligence assisted. And they need these nanobots to be inside of you in order to make the stuff work. So this is the way that the House of Rothschild is controlling everything, every single thing.
So all of that makes sense. I mean, this is disturbing stuff, but it makes sense to me. I think Rex would somewhat agree. I mean, him and I are big anti-vaccine and nanos and all of the nonsense that's going on. But
you will not assimilate me.
If the dark star, is going to destroy 80-90% of the population, then why do they need that? That's a fail-safe that if it doesn't, or I mean, what is their end game with that?
No, their end game is control. They cannot allow the sleepers that are all around them to wake up to what's happening, because that'll start a civil war. They're not going to be able to run to the underground arc cities. So this is a mechanism, this is a device that they use to control the masses right now. So what they have in Denver, remember that the New York Charter of the Council on Foreign Relations opened up their charter in Denver in 1938. That's how long they've been preparing the underground arc city program that's there, the underground bunker positions that are there. And that's why the FBI, the CIA moved their headquarters there in 2005, because now they're working with the Council on Foreign Relations working groups. These working groups are the ones that are running these real world simulations. There's a radio show happening right now. We're in their simulation.
Right.
The way that they connect, the way they get the impulse, the input data to feed their real world host is through HARP, it's through artificial intelligence communicating with the nanos in your body so that it can transmit and give input to the real world host. They have a main program, and then they create duplicates of that in order to identify threats. They're going to change one thing in millions of simulations. Artificial intelligence does this very rapidly, and they identify the threats. That's why so many of these astronomers read Stu Noodle's Dead Astronomer Report. He was one of my key researchers. That's why they're being killed, because they're in dark star imaging. And if one of these researchers devises a way to see the black star, it's going to ruin the underground Arc City program. So they're killed before they ever invent the thing. They invented the thing in a simulation already. AI identified them as a threat, and he killed them in the past. AI is always working in the future.
So wait a minute. So did you correct me if I'm wrong? Have you had researchers working for you that have been killed?
Yes.
Jesus. Okay.
Michael Owens, my chief astronomer, most brilliant man I ever met, he had to be taken out of the way, because he knew the guy was a genius, brilliant man. He took over my desktop with a new NASA program and showed me all the asteroids, all the meteors coming out of the Leo constellation back in 2011. He was a very gifted man, and he went to the hospital. Not only him, Stu Noodle, a group went in March of 2012, and another group went in 2000. In the next month in April. Stu Noodle went with the second group. My mother went to the hospital the same day as Michael Owens. 13 other members of my research group, 350 members I had in my research group. Many of the administrators, they were found unconscious. They were taken to the hospital, just like my mother was, just like Michael Owens was. Their lungs filled with fluid, and then their they start having heart attacks. And we're talking about people having heart attacks that are 25 years old, members of my research group. Stu Noodle was only 34 years old. And he went to the hospital. He was there 7 weeks, lungs filling with fluid, multiple heart attacks. And the people that lived have stents in their hearts. My sister-in-law had a stent put in her heart, totally clean system. She doesn't have any plaque whatsoever. 2 nodes were growing in a major artery inside of her heart, causing her to have a stent. My mother died, my cousin died, and my other cousin died within 2 weeks in March 2013. They died on the next cycle. So there's that information. A lot of that information is in the Dropbox folder. I don't talk about it a whole lot, because the more you know, the more chances that you're going to become a threat to artificial intelligence. That's one of I was doing 7 radio shows a week. I was reaching over 1 million people per month, and that's whenever the problem started. So that's why I've been doing 1 radio show and doing things slowly and trying not to get ahead of the pace of the elite. Once we get beyond their fail-safe, they won't care. But until then, their worst fear is that the military contingent, the lettered agencies, people working our government, that they're going to wake up and then want their place in the underground Arc City, and there's not enough room for everybody. Civil war that ruins the elite plan. So this is the way that they do it. That's what HARP is. It's a means so that they can control everything. The thing that you were asking me about is the geoengineering, like the scalar square technology and things like that. They're using that to make the Earth look more normal. If they weren't using these devices, weather modification devices, then it would become more apparent what's going on. So they're trying to nudge things to make them look like a regular weather pattern, whenever what's happening to the Earth right now is anything but regular. You have jet stream fluctuation that is wild,
right.
And you have the air masses now mixing from the northern and southern hemispheres, which is wild.
Right.
That was caused by ocean conveyor disruption. The northern ice sheets depleted very rapidly because of the large magnetite deposits under the North Pole. The black star is taking the sun's electromagnetism and it's redirecting it through a secondary set of magnetic portal connections. The Earth is absorbing that electromagnetism and it's being translated into heat through induction. The induction process, like a new wave cooker. So the metals and the salts are what's causing the Earth to heat up. The northern ice sheets depleted, that reduced the polar drip. You have not enough polar drip, and then the ocean conveyor breaks. That's already happened. Then the jet stream starts fluctuating. That's already happened. So these dominoes are falling. The elite are trying to prop them up, like they're propping up silver using the back door of the Fed, the short position of JP Morgan. It's very similar. They're trying to make your money look like it's worth something so you don't wake up. They're trying to keep gas around $2 a gallon. They're trying to manipulate everything to make sure that everybody thinks it's cool, and so they don't wake up. They're thinking peace and safety.
So with all of that, so when you mentioned the fail-safe, when they don't care anymore, when is that?
My best, because it's a guess. Because that's what I do, is threat assessment, contingency planning for people. If I was advising them, it'd be 60 to 90 days before the event, and that we know that event's going to happen in May, and we know the black stars move left in the orbit diagram an average of 12 degrees per year for a decade. Last year it only moved 3. The reason is because the relationship it has with the black star, between the black star and the sun, they have mismatched magnetic polarity, so that the black star is actually slowing down as it's coming to perihelion position, which is crazy. And I only found out about it from reading the research of a Canadian student, not from NASA, and it was observed two stars coming together, and the smaller one was slowing down because the binary star magnetic repulsion. So that's what we have as a star. It's not a planet, it's a star. And it is being repelled by the sun at the same time as it's being drawn in by the gravity. The deal is the gravity force pulling it in multiplies it by 2 with the square of the closing distance. The square of the closing distance. The magnetic polarity strength, the repulsion force is increasing by the cube of the closing distance. It's actually greater than the cube because we're not dealing with static magnets here that have a certain force. We're dealing with a black star that's siphoning energy from the sun and becoming more powerful. So it's actually growing. That repulsion.
That's like the fifth element.
It's coming in, and the black star magnetic polarity strength is growing while the sun's magnetic polarity strength is weakening. So it's actually growing by more than the cube of the closing distance. So what's happening is when it's far away and it's coming in, it's on an elliptical orbit, but it's transitioning. We caught it in between 2015 and 2016, transitioning to something that's more circular. And it's going to reach perihelion near Venus orbit path. When it does, and it's done this before. That's why Venus is screwed up. Venus has a reverse rotation. It's the planet in the inner solar system that rotates backwards from all the others.
Terrell, can I jump in real quick about Venus?
Sure.
Because I was actually going to ask that question, then I started thinking about something else. And I remember in 2011, I read multiple articles and blog posts about how Venus, it flipped or something weird was going on. And I just went and did a bunch of research just now, and I tried to find that same article, and I couldn't find it. So is there any truth to that?
Not that it flipped. The story that I saw, I think in 2012, was that Venus's rotation is slowing, and they couldn't figure out why. Like they couldn't figure out the Saturn dust storms 30 years apart when it was passing through Leo. Like the mystery Martian dust storms, Jupiter's liquefying core. These are things that the scientists, the shrinking heliosphere, hasn't mystified. Reversing magnetosphere in our Earth. That's where my investigation picks up when we see the anomaly, when we see what's baffling the scientists, things that they can't explain. And then when we do the research, we track it backwards and we realize it's because of black star influence. So what we're talking about. So it's not that Venus has flipped or anything. It's been messed with many times because the perihelion position of the black star, the perihelion is whenever this object is nearest the sun before it heads back out. When it's moving to that circular orbit, and it's going to come around at Venus orbit path very close to it. So Venus might be rotating differently when the black star leaves this time than it is right now.
So Terrell, let me link this to current modern day events right now. I mean, Brex and I talking in the last day or so off the record. I mean, we've never seen so much craziness going on right now in the geopolitical structure of the world, obviously with the insanity of the U.S. election. So I want to seek that to, I guess, the elite strategy. If they've known about it since 1938, they've moved everything to, Denver and obviously other deep underground military underground bases or installations somewhere in the Midwest, in the mountainous regions, I would assume. At what point do they start to leave and bug out?
60 to 90 days.
From now?
No. Before the event.
Before May. And you're saying the event is May.
We know the month because of the...
Just not the year.
The slow move, it was predicted for May the 20th, 2017, according to the old modeling, because it's moved for a decade, 12 degrees left in the orbit diagram. So as this thing was coming in, it was slowing down to make it appear as this thing had a circular orbit, which is impossible. It created a 188-day cycle. Saturn has a natural 189-day cycle. A lot of people thought it was Saturn because of that, but it created a 188-day cycle because of that relationship. So it was figured for May 20th, 2017. My prediction for last year was for May the 7th, and it came early on April the 28th. That's only 3 days after April the 25th of the previous year, the 7.8 Nepal quake. A 3-degree move was not projected by any of the modeling. So now we're sitting here wondering, are we going to have another 3-degree move this year? Is it going to be another 12-degree move? What's it going to do? The Earth has to testify. As we come to outside orbit position, then I got new data. That happened August the 19th. Everything happened too early. Now we're going to come behind the sun relative to the black star, and I've got a lot of data that I'm going to gather as we're coming behind. We're going to watch the solar flare activity. We're above the plane, so I'm not, and it's below the plane, so I may not get my 3 solar flares leading up to my backside alignment quake event. The quake event last year was the 2 7.6 Peru quakes, November 24th, 2015. That happened when the Earth passed behind the sun relative to the black star. Is it going to be 3 days later this year, and it's going to match the front side alignment? See, these are things that I don't know yet, but the Earth will tell us. Then after this rash of earthquakes and volcanism we're going to have in the second 2 weeks of November, it's going to happen. We're going to go to outside orbit position again 3 months later. And I'm going to be able to look at all the seismic values. That's going to tell me how far left in the orbit diagram this guy went. Now, whenever it gets to the left side of Libra, my old modeling said it's here. So this thing is transitioning in its modeling, but I think everything is going to equal out by the time it gets to Earth orbit path. So there's no way that it can go beyond into June or July, because then its orbit path would make it so far out that it would miss Earth altogether. There's no possibility for a crossing event in that. That's what Nibiru means, planet of crossing. So it's May the 20th. It's going to be in the month of May. Pretty darn sure that, but I know enough to know that I don't know what year it is.
Well, wouldn't it be reasonable to assume, if we're going to have this kind of massive earthquake, I guess maybe not. I mean, I guess I'm just thinking for myself because of where I live. But so this type of earthquake activity that's going to happen in the second 2 weeks of November. I mean, wouldn't this type, if it's as big as you say it is, where it's crustal movements, splitting, whatever. I mean, that's going to disrupt. It's going to bring on societal chaos, right? In North America, at least.
That's right, but that's not what I'm predicting for this orbit cycle. See, we're watching the magma waves that are pressurized from the transition zone of Earth's mantle, these rising magma plumes. And volume 28 of my newsletter, I do a lot of work on it, and I did a little work on it on this newsletter today. We can actually see, the scientists did give us an image inside of the Earth of these rising magma plumes. That's going to be what destroys the western part of the United States before it shifts east. So we know the seismic pattern. We know that these deep earthquakes we're seeing in Fiji right now, down in the transition zone, last week they jumped over into South America, just like those 2 Peruvian quakes. They were more than 600 kilometers deep under South America. They jumped over from Indonesia. Those earthquake events are going to continue migrating north. We're going to see how far north. But I expect to see the deep earthquakes going through Central America and Mexico before they get to California. So you're going to have plenty of warning for something like that.
So when you say, like, what kind of white, are we talking like over an 8.5, where it's like the movie, Earthquake, the movie that was out last year, where the entire state was just separated? Or are we talking just, I guess.
We're not talking about those kind of earthquakes. We're talking about earthquakes that take place 600 kilometers deep inside the Earth.
Right.
So it's not like you're going to feel the Earth shaking. It has nothing to do with Earth's crust. It has to do with the transition zone of Earth's mantle. So out there in Fiji, where they're having, or even over in South America, when they had this big 7.6s, they were deep, deep down in the Earth. That causes that magma to rise. It displaces. As that magma is rising, then it becomes, it's like an air bubble on the bottom of the ocean. As it rises, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It displaces the heavier magma that is supporting the crust. Whenever all them bubbles from all that, the magma from the transition zone is glassy-like. Rock on top of the transition zone, metal on the bottom. This is the glass that's in the middle. Whenever Yellowstone erupted the last time, it killed animals on the other side of the planet because it came from the transition zone of the mantle. So I saw a report today that says that earthquakes can happen in California further than 15 miles deep. They can happen 600 kilometers deep.
Right. They've been reporting that actually recently about
right.
That. So they're kind of prepping us. But what, again, for the lay person, and we're on live on Facebook right now, so there's a lot of people watching, and listening, and definitely they're listening. What does that mean? Like, are we talking a giant tsunami? Are we talking, magma coming up through the streets? I mean, what are we talking about?
All the above. Talking about massive. See, California is in the worst position in the whole world because the magma these plumes originated in Indonesia. They're pushing up through the Philippines. They're pushing up through Japan. We had a new volcanic eruption this week in Japan and Kamchatka. This magma wave is deep in the earth and it's coming around. It has horns on it that push up, little domes that push up. That's what's creating these 5 magnitude earthquakes off the coast of Central America and Mexico right now. We're having a series of them. I predicted them in advance. I know where the magma plumes are, and it's happening. Now, we are going to be in an uptick period until the end of November. The Earth core is going to continue getting hotter and hotter until the end of November, and then we're going to go through a lull period. The Earth core is going to cool down again. So the question is, how far are these magma waves going to push before they start retreating back towards Indonesia? So we still have all the way until the end of November, and I'm already seeing the 5 magnitude earthquakes off of the coast of South America, Central America, Mexico, out in the Pacific. That's from these magma plumes that are deep in the earth, and they're wanting to rise up. They're pushing magma already, and it's causing these 5 magnitude earthquakes. Those are warning signs that I'm giving you right there.
So what you're saying essentially is that the likelihood of an ELE for the Western United States is extremely high.
Extremely high. These magma waves are pushing through Chile. They're pushing through Kamchatka. But whenever they converge at the coming around the Pacific Ocean Ring of Fire, they're going to push through Cascadia. They're going to come from the south, and they're going to converge at the California quake swarm area. And when that happens, the 2 waves are going to make a mountainous wave. And that is going to cause the destruction that I'm talking about. I've been warning about this for a couple of years, and there's a lot of science. The resets, the tectonic volcanic resets that have taken place going back to 2004 with the 9.3 Sumatra quake, the one that made the big tsunami that killed a lot of people. That's an event on the Black Star timeline. Then another big event was Solomon Island. That cracked the tectonic plate in two, multiple 8 magnitude earthquakes, and that took place February 6th, 2013. Shortly after that, you started having the +3 magnitude earthquake jump at the Oklahoma quake swarm area. In 2013 is when it happened. 2014, that's whenever the Russians came out with the Grim Report. Make sure you read it. The Grim Report coming out from the Russians. The magnetic anomalies that they see over the United States now is caused by the separation of the tectonic plates. Whenever you had the break of the tectonic plate, Solomon Islands, it caused the start of a tectonic cascade. These plates in California, they are pushed up against the North American craton. The North American craton is 250 kilometers deep, very stable. Where you are sitting, the crust, Earth crust is only 60 kilometers deep. All these plates are pushed up against it, and everything has been safe until Solomon Island. That was a domino that fell against California, because if you notice, there's a new line of earthquakes from Texas up through Seattle that's pointing at Cascadia. Now, Yellowstone is part of the California quake swarm area. When I started this investigation, it was a Baja California quake swarm area. Now it's proliferated all the way up through Canada. It's getting bigger, and it's getting bigger because of the tectonic reset that took place. We know there was a reset because my indicator quakes, the 2.5 to 4 magnitude, 2 weeks after that event dropped down to just 107 globally. That hasn't happened before, and it hasn't happened since then. Another big event, the 8.3 Chile quake, 2015, happened in week 34. Whenever that happened, we had 12 6 magnitude earthquakes that were associated with it. After that event, for 5 weeks, we did not have a 6 magnitude earthquake in the entire world. 5 weeks. That was the tectonic reset. The pressures that have been building up in the Pacific Ocean Ring of Fire are now jumping through South America to the Atlantic Ocean. So we know that what the pattern is. We start having the activity along the Mid-Atlantic Ridge at the very end of the Earth change uptake periods. We've already seen that in this uptake period whenever we had 2 months to go still. So there's a gigantic change in the entire globe with the seismicity and with the volcanism. Now the earthquakes and the volcanism are becoming more connected than they were previous to Solomon Island. So the warning signs are everywhere. And these waves are going to continue building. Like dominoes falling, they're going to converge at California. That is going to happen later in the timeline. But like I said, I'm on the case. We're watching this magma plume activity, and we're making predictions about where we're going to get these 5 magnitude earthquakes, and it's coming true. But if you open up your earthquake 3D and look off the coast of Mexico, south of your position, you're going to see a lot of 5s out there in the Pacific Ocean. That's that magma wave coming in your direction. So I would be.
So when should I leave, Terrell? So when should I take my family and get the F out of California? At what point, and how far east do I need to go? Is Nevada and Arizona also at risk?
There is no safe zone west of the Rocky Mountain Ridge in the United States. There's not one there. The reason is because all of those calderas, there's lots of calderas out there. They're going to be pressurized from the bottom. They're going to be filled with that glassy type magma. It's going to displace the heavier magma. Everything's going to bulge like Jiffy Pop popcorn, and then it's going to collapse. As soon as you have an eruption, it's going to collapse. That's what creates the big hole out there.
So if any of those blow, and Yellowstone is obviously in the danger zone, I mean, what are we talking about, though, from an impact for, like, North America alone? I mean, nobody's safe, right? I mean, it can extinguish population, block out the sun for months, right?
The only thing going to put that fire out is the Pacific Ocean. And the safest place to be in the United States is in the Ozarks, just like John Moore says, just like the Navy intelligence people. The Navy, because I'm from a Navy family, Navy intelligence knows what's happening, but the Navy does not know what's happening out there. The guys that know that's why I moved to the Ozarks and worked there for 2 years, because I know this stuff's coming. So I went there and worked without pay on a large land. You could walk around this land for days with a big giant cavern, and brought my survival group there. And survival groups are forming right now, not at that position, but at a nearby location. Then it's the safest place to be. You're far enough south to avoid the pyroclastic flows. You got protection from the Rocky Mountain Range, and the prevailing winds are going to take it north of our position. The power plants that are on the North American craton are going to be decommissioned. The elite are going to get their power from there later in the timeline. There's no comparison to a nuclear power plant on the North American craton in one that is on the East Coast, where you have thin crust and you're going to have crustal displacement later in the timeline. There's also no safe zone east of the Mississippi River Basin for that reason. Just imagine whenever after Yellowstone goes, New Madrid's going to pop, you're going to have a new line of earthquakes running from Louisiana all the way up to the Great Lakes. It's going to liquefy the entire region, the liquefaction is going to create the inland Gulf. Everything is going to flow right out into the Gulf of Mexico, and the salt water is going to run all the way up to the Great Lakes. That's the scenario that we're talking about. And then, problem is, these you know, the stories of Pangea. There was one continent.
Right.
Well, the edges went away from each other, and they came together on the other side of the planet. Guess where that is? Central United States. So you have got a fault line that is on the eastern side of the ridge of the Appalachian Mountains that's pushed together like fists. Whenever New Madrid goes, then you're going to get a settling from the ridge that's going to want to move west, and it's going to open up this crack, and you have a fault that's running from North Carolina all the way up to New England that's going to shake just like the New Madrid. There's no safe zone over there. You can't go in a cavern and come out later because of all the nuclear power plants and the prevailing winds are over there. So my group, that we went to the Ozarks, and we have people from California and New York and North Carolina, all over the country. It's in the central part of the country. That has been identified as the safest place in the Northern Hemisphere for lots and lots of reasons. Natural water resources that come from the aquifers, and cavern formations where the animals can avoid, so that can become our food source. And it's a remote area. We're 45 minutes from a paved road, for example. And so it's the perfect survival location, and that's where you're going to want to look. If I were you, I would take a vacation, go to the Ozarks, visit caverns, shake hands with those people, and then make that my place that I'm going to bug out to. You don't have to move. You have to have a bug out location, a place that you're going to go. Whenever your threat assessment guy tells you when to go, you're a newsletter subscriber. You subscribe to my newsletter, so you're going to get the notice that you need to bail. You need to get the heck out of there, because when I'm making my move, you guys are all going to know.
So real quick for everybody that's watching, because we got a lot of people watching, how can people subscribe to your newsletter? And by the way, I subscribe to his newsletter, not blowing smoke. He's not trying to collect money from people. It's dirt cheap, and he gives it to you for the whole year. How much is it, Terrell? How do they do it?
$25 per year, and you go to this website right here. There's my name, Terrell03.com.
RRAL03.com. I subscribe. Yep. He's got amazing information. He's got a book on 9/11 too that I've been skimming through. That's absolutely fantastic. So
yeah, there's a lot of free stuff here. This is the scripture section. This is the 2-hour radio show on that. It's all introductory to the Mystery Explained, the book I wrote. It's a pig, and you want to see God's wisdom. It's hidden in plain sight through His 3 witnesses of spirit, blood, and water. That's where you're going to want to go. If you're a God-fearing, gospel-believing Christian, you don't have to prepare for anything. In 1 Thessalonians 4, it's told that we're caught away. The destruction that I'm talking about comes in 1 Thessalonians 5. It comes afterward. So that's the section for, like, if you're elderly, if you are dependent on medications to live, go to the scripture section. Then this is the 9/11 section right here. And it's same format, 6 videos, and then a 2-hour radio show and a book here. And same thing here, 6 videos, 2-hour radio show, and then my newsletter. And you get 52 newsletters. You actually get access to all the newsletters. I recommend volume number 9 from 2012. Michael Owens wrote it, the gifted guy. He was the one that was writing all the featured articles back then. And so you just hit the subscription button, and it's a PayPal thing. If you don't want to use PayPal because you don't like PayPal or whatever, you can click this Contact Terrell button and write me, and I will give you a snail mail address. You can send a check, $25 per year, and you get a ton of benefits from that. You get the special Gmail account that you write. And then you ask me your questions, and pretty prompt, usually by the next morning, then you have your answer. And then I can include that in the weekly newsletters to help other people.
I know you have some questions. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is just some great information. I was talking about synchronicities earlier, and there's actually a group that got in touch with me from the Ozarks, and they said, hey, we've got this homestead program we're doing out here. It's extremely cheap. We're helping people get set up for virtually next to nothing. And I think that's fantastic. I've been through Missouri and many times. I mean, I love it out there. And it just seems like people assume that aren't from Missouri or Texas, that Texas is like the #1 place for patriotism, essentially. And I'm sure many pockets are, but in San Antonio, it's a real melting pot. And there's a lot of great people out here. But if you go to Missouri, I mean, I'm talking about patriotism out there. People just really appreciate the American freedoms and just a lot of, you see that, you sense that. You go to Branson, there's a lot of military people out there, and the Mark Twain Forest is beautiful. It's a great place to be, so that's fantastic. And the question I was going to ask is, this is going to divert the topic here, but I think this is so important, especially because of what you were talking about just a minute ago. And most people aren't real informed with the nanotech that's involved with a lot of these chemtrails or chemicals that are being sprayed in the atmosphere, and who knows where else they're being put. Definitely there's possibilities. Some people have said the vaccines and medicines. Who knows if they're putting in organic food? I mean, they very well could be, because so many corporations control so much. But you said that you had a friend that actually helped build these HARP-like facilities around the world, correct?
200 of them, yes. Billy Hayes.
Okay. So I had an opportunity to go to Alaska in 2013. And speaking of radiation levels, when I was up in the plane, it went all the way up to 4.2, which was just the high 4.2 microsieverts per hour from 0.07, essentially, when I was on the ground. So just think about that for a minute. But anyway, I made a phone call to my friends before I went out there, and I talked to somebody on a chat line about how I was going to go to Alaska and check out the HARP facilities. And I was just kind of joking around when I said it, but I was definitely thinking about it. I wanted to get out there and look at it, but I didn't say I was going to do anything conspicuous. I just wanted to go out and check it out. So I go to Alaska. I spent a month out there with work, and I had a chance to kind of get outside of Anchorage, not anywhere close to the HARP facilities, but I'm with my friends and coworkers. We're driving. We stop at this this park. Essentially, it's a national park. I don't even know if it was a national park, but there was a whole bunch of salmon that were coming in because it was salmon season, essentially. And there were these two homeless people we saw sitting outside of this park. And we started talking. We're like, they're probably going to wait for people to leave at nighttime and go get all the salmon that are there, because there were just so many salmon coming in. And I said, no, that's a bad idea, because there's those cameras right there. You see that? And they said, yeah. So we see them. We think they're homeless. We get back in the vehicle. We take off, 45 minutes down the road. And then there's a gas station we stop at to grab some drinks, get some fuel. And my friend that I was with, coworker, he goes, hey, you see those guys right there? Weren't those the homeless people that were across the street at the park that we were just talking about? I said, yeah, that's them. So essentially, just because I said I was going to check out HARP on some chat internet thing, I think it was Godlike Productions forum at the time, I got followed around out there at that one point, like they were just waiting to see if I was going to go check out that facility. So that's pretty intense, man. And as far as the AI tech you're talking about, I've speculated about this for years. I've blogged about it, but I haven't really had any super solid evidence to back it up, just little bits and pieces and putting things together, more of a theory, essentially, a hypothesis, like there's a Sims virtual reality that plays us and threat matrices, etc. With that being said, I'm starting to wonder, does the AI control the people? Or do people control the AI? I mean, just look at Skynet in the movies. Skynet is real. There's satellites around the world that have been there since the 50s called Skynet that do certain spy-type programs. Are we literally in the Matrix living out some type of virtual reality program? Could that explain quantum physics? Could that explain how DNA breaks down into quad code? Could that explain how there's sacred geometry and everything? Is this the key to the possibilities? And is this why people like Elon Musk and others say we want to break out of the Matrix? We're living in this virtual reality system, and it's time to break free.
We talked a little bit before the show about the real-world simulations. I think I gave you a little bit of information on that. Their ultimate goal is to reverse the feed. See, they're gathering input data from you to feed your real-world host in the simulation. Now, the goal is to reverse that so that the real-world host inside is controlling you. So that's what their goal is to be able to control. This is about manipulation and control, and just so they can get to the underground arc cities. Because, like you said, the Black Star is going to kill everybody.
Okay, so
we are living in a matrix right now. You are connected to a host that's in a matrix right now. The question is, have you been reverse fed yet? Is that why people are walking around as like zombies? Like they don't know what's going on? Because a percentage of the population, according to Billy, cannot be controlled by HARP. A percentage of the population, Morgellons disease is a side effect of rejecting the technology, the nanotechnology, the filaments. They could grow right out of your skin. And there is a way to neutralize their ability. It's the nanofilament replication inhibitor. And if you just Google make sure you go to my YouTube channel and Google it. I mean, and subscribe. And then Google, you can find my video on the nanofilament. What you're talking about is the boron molecule. Boron is an extremely efficient little guy. It's a miracle drug. 24 health benefits from just taking a pinch, three pinches a day. And you're just your regular drinking water. But don't put anything in your body because of me. I'm not a doctor. I'm a researcher. But my glass right beside me right now, right here, has got a pinch of sodium borate in it. Sodium borate, that's what you want to use. And that eats the legs off of the nanos. They're in your body. It also is a natural antifungal. So if you have Candida condition, which about 3/4 of the Americans have, then it's going to neutralize that too. It's going to raise your blood pH. It has a 9.3 pH. So I encourage you to go to boraxcures.com and look at it, but also look at my video. And a little bit of apple cider vinegar goes a long way. 18 health benefits from that. And just 2 tablespoons a day is all you need of that.
So real quick, we got a bunch of questions, but I want to make sure that you finish with what you want to say, and also Rex, if he has anything he wants to add to. We have some really good questions for you. Let me just seed this with, you're talking about the elites and the fail-safe and all that. So what related to current events right now if we're having this massive earthquake and complete chaos at the end of November, as you're calling it.
Wait. No, this is like we had the 7.6s last year. It wasn't a massive event. We had a pair of 7.6s in Peru. You can read about it. But
No,
I'm not predicting anything like that. We had a rash of earthquakes in April. But these magma waves have not matured yet. They're not fully pressurized yet. I'm not expecting any crustal displacement until later in the timeline.
Oh, so you're saying we're not going to have like ELE type stuff in the end of November?
No, this is when the Earth passes behind the sun relative to the black star. I have to gather the data. There's going to be solar flaring that takes place with it. And there's other things that I'm looking for so I can build the predictive modeling. I have to have data to feed it.
About California, you've completely lost me. I'm talking about California. You said that at the end of November, that's what you said, that we were going to have this issue, correct? Or am I?
That's when we pass behind the sun relative to the black star. We're going to have an earthquake event. It's likely going to be a 7 magnitude. Last year was a 7.6. It happened down in South America. I'm not saying that's going to happen in California. If I was to speculate, I would actually think that it's going to happen between Peru and Mexico. If I was going to speculate, because the last one took place down in Peru, I'm expecting it to move north. But it can happen over in Indonesia. It can be a Japan quake like Fukushima.
Right.
This is not going to be a global event. It's going to be a local event somewhere. The 2012 scenario that I'm describing for you takes place when the black star gets here.
Right.
That could be 2017. It could be 2018. It could be 2019. I don't know the year. I know the month.
But you feel like with your research and everything that you guys are tracking, that you guys will have a good idea, be able to give people advance notice.
Absolutely.
Cool. So do you think then? So back to the elites, and Rex, I'm sure if you have something, interrupt me here. But back to the elites. What is the real reason that they don't want anybody to know? Is it just for the eugenics, just to reduce population?
It's going to threaten their own survival. Whenever you know that the world's about to end, what are you going to do? They can't control you then. They can't ensure the safety of their families going to the underground arc cities. They have to keep it quiet. Just like the 2012 movie. The people with green cards, they know they're not telling a soul.
China will save you.
No.
That's what they show in 2012 at the end. I was being sarcastic there, but where are the arcs? In China.
Right.
Well,
that's the Hollywood spin. In my opinion, Hollywood's really pushing China as the new economic savior, the new world power. We were talking about this another episode, Jay, about how so many TV shows are doing the same thing. So
not happening. China cannot even breathe. They're not smart enough to. What we should be doing is vapor plasma integrated engines. I know that's a little bit of a different topic, but vaporize the fuel, get 100% burn. You don't have a smog. It was invented by a Canadian back in 1930s. We should be getting 200 miles a gallon by vaporizing using a giant manifold on our engines. And we're not doing it. But China seems like they should be smart enough to figure out how to beat the pollution problem. There are people running around with masks on. So China has a lot of growing up to do before they're going to save the world, in my opinion.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just giving you Hollywood's impression.
Right.
So Terrell, what are your thoughts on the current presidential election? Is there any chance that Trump has a winning, or it's already completely rigged and Hillary's installed? And
it doesn't matter who wins. The president of the United States is the chairman of the Council on Foreign Relations in Denver.
Right.
Okay. Let's just use Benghazi as an example. People know about it. The stand down order came from Denver. Obama was told to stand down. Hillary was told to stand down. General Ham, AFRICOM, was told to stand down because Stevens was a double agent. And he was going to expose the gun running going to ISIS in Jordan. The CIA and the DOD were training ISIS in Jordan back in 2012 to fill the power vacuum created by Obama. But Obama doesn't do anything. He's a puppet. The guy doesn't have a brain in his head. He doesn't know what he's doing. The people that are doing it are the people, the House of Rothschild, the Council on Foreign Relations. That's on this side of the country, on this side of the world. Trilateral Commission, the Bilderbergs, their working groups. Those are the people that run the show. Those people in Washington, it doesn't matter who's over there. It doesn't matter whatsoever. The problem that I have with Hillary is the fact that so many Americans are willing to accept somebody so corrupt,
right,
as their president.
I don't think they are. I think that the whole thing is rigged. I think that the media is making all of us, meaning everyone, assume that people are willing to accept the corruption, but I don't think they are. I think the whole thing is a trick. FUCK. I don't think anybody is willing to. I think that the people they interview for the sound bites that say they're in support of Hillary, I think it's all rigged. Like everything, it's all rigged. The media is in control of everything, like you said.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I would really rather see Trump. The big problem we have here is the competition with illegals, companies that hire strictly illegals. Our company had 350 people, and it's out of business because we refused to work the illegals. The prices kept going down and down and down and down below cost because you can hire 3 illegals for the price of 1 bricklayer, American bricklayer. So that's the big problem we have here. And if he could fix some of that, which is not going to happen, it's part of the worker displacement agenda of the CFR. So you've got NAFTA type treaties, guest worker programs. They're going to bring 1.5 million foreigners into this country to take jobs that we don't even have. And they're going to do it every single year as part of the agenda. So the United States is done. That's why I'm a member of a survival group in the Ozarks. I think you guys should be too.
So let me ask you some
New World
questions.
Order.
Rex, if you don't have anything, Rex, I'm going to ask questions from the group. What are your thoughts?
Sounds good.
Okay, so a lot of questions. I'm going to try to skim to the best ones here. Could a nuclear war have any impact on the seismic levels of the Earth?
A nuclear war have any effect on seismic levels?
Yes, meaning what you're projecting from this inbound body. Could it throw off your measurements?
I've never been asked that question before. Nuclear.
That's somebody from the group.
Well, whenever you start blasting things with nukes, you have a lot more problem with fallout. And why would you want to do that?
Well, I mean, obviously they're right now. Russia and the United States are threatening them.
No, they're not. They're friends. This is all good cop, bad cop thing. They're keeping you mesmerized watching them. They're getting ready to run the underground arc cities. They have to run sleeper operations. So they have to get their people that are not going to the underground cities. They have to get them oriented, trained for deployment. They're going to be deploying troops everywhere when the thing gets here because they want Americans on Russian soil, Russians on our soil. Because then whenever it comes time, they're going to deploy the sleepers against us and we're going to neutralize one another. That's the plan. Also, there's going to be a peace treaty. And the only way they're going to have a peace treaty is if they bang the war drums, make everybody think that they're going to war. The Russians, the Americans, the elite, they have too much of a threat with the Black Star. They're not going to create more threats by blowing people up with nukes. That is not going to happen. They're going to get up on the stage just like Trump and Hillary, and they're going to dance around and everything, and then they're going to decide, well, we better have peace. That's what's going to happen. It's all a smokescreen. I encourage you to read the book None Dare Call It Conspiracy by former Congressman Gary Allen. It came out in the 70s. I read it when I was a teenager.
What's it called? What's the name of it?
None Dare Call It Conspiracy by former Congressman Gary Allen. It's a very small book. Chapter 3 is the money manipulators, talks about the House of Rothschild, and it shows you who really runs things. A lot of people thought these things, not Black Star, but this collapse was going to happen back in the 70s. And I think a lot of that had to do with the Kissinger agreement, the dollar denominating oil wealth in the Middle East to push. Remember the gas prices we had back then? Like the world was running out of gas. People were paying $3 and $4 a gallon back in the 70s because all this stuff was brought to a head until they got their big agreement so that the dollar was used for exchange around the globe. So I've got a little different view what the Russians are doing, what the Americans are doing. This is all a smokescreen. He's going to explain to you right at the beginning of the book about smoke screening so you can watch the TV like I do and you can recognize what's just a game and what's real.
So another question for you is, what about the secret space programs? Wouldn't some of the elite just move off planet?
Well, there's stories about people going to Mars. There's people beaming to Mars, like Star Trek,
right.
Stuff like that. The problems that we're going to have here is they're going to have throughout the solar system. They're not going to get away by getting in a spaceship, and they wouldn't want to do that anyway. They want to stay right here. The Georgia Guidestones agenda is going to be fulfilled by the Black Star. They're going to have their 500 million, the world population to grow. At least that's their plan. They've already got their plan laid out here. If they were just going to get in a ship and go, one thing, there's far too many of them, of the elite.
Well, what I don't understand too, and I'm very familiar with the Georgia Guidestones, is the 500 million left or whatever. But isn't the world, if all these massive geomagnetic and geodytic, all these changes occur around the globe, on the planet, and it's destroyed and vaporized, and we have magma in the air, we have nuclear waste and contamination everywhere. I mean, how is the planet even livable?
That's where the alien part comes in, and I don't like really going there. It freaks people out. But
no, please do. This is a secret group. We can handle it here.
Okay. Well, the same people that piloted the chariot of fire that picked up Elijah and took him to heaven in 2 Kings chapter 2, start at verse 10, then those are the people that are here right now. They are here. They are very close to us right now. They're not going to interfere. But whenever this happens, then they are the ones that are going to clean up the mess. The other thing is, this is going to sound a little strange too, AI that is running this underground real-world simulation, it's not created by people. It was given to them by the aliens. So the elite have been working with the aliens for a long time. A lot of what you think is a UFO, a spaceship, is reverse technology that the Americans, the Russians, they have been doing.
But the tech was given to them by the aliens, correct?
That's right. So what you're dealing with is a silicon-based life form.
Right.
And it could be a Trojan horse type deal. They, I don't know if they know what they have over there, but that's what they're using. And the same aliens are the ones that are already here. They've been here millions and millions of years. They're actually not extraterrestrial. They're actually terrestrial. They're actually from here. And this is God's little safe haven. This is where he's doing his thing, and they're helping him do it. So this is all part of God's plan. That's why it's in the scriptures. The elite are going to lose. They're actually digging their own graves. That's what they're doing.
Yeah, but nobody wins if 95% of the world's population.
No, we're on the threshold of something very glorious of what's going to happen here. The world's going to be purified by water and fire, and it's going to start over again. And then we're going to have about 3,600 years to the end of the age. It's going to be the most glorious time this earth has seen. Biggest kingdom.
The golden age is what you're saying.
It's going to be great. It's going to be, people are going to live to be very old. They're going to sleep in the woods. Don't care about anything. You're not going to have the type of situation that you have now. Satan's going to be chained, and the sons of God are going to be occupying those heavenly places and helping Elijah restore all things. We're getting ready for the restoration of all things here, but it begins with an enema. That's that. We're going to go through that first.
Rex, do you have any thoughts?
I was going to say, I mean, this is some great information, and what you've brought to the table, I certainly appreciate. It's nice to see the charts and the data put together. Now, one thing that I do find fascinating is, as far as the global things that are going on right now, I remember I talked to Dane Wigington a couple years ago, and he was telling me that even Siberia was at an all-time high as far as the heat is considered. So I'm wondering if it does get hot enough to where these giant icebergs in Alaska and around the world start to just completely melt, there's nothing left. There's probably going to be other parts of the world that they're going to create glaciers as well, right? It's still going to be the same thing, just different pockets of the planet, essentially. It's kind of like a fusion system is what I'm seeing once this is all done.
Are you talking about in the future?
Yes.
After the black star leaves. Well, the reason that you're seeing all this depletion is because of the way the metal is distributed and the extra electromagnetism. So the sun is not going to sleep. The sun is being drained of its energy, but it's being redirected through those magnetic portal connections based on near proximity. So since it's getting closer and closer to us, then the Earth is getting hotter and hotter. 2017 will be the hottest year on record. Just like 2016 was the hottest year on record, just like 2015. It's going to keep getting hotter every year. The ocean temperatures, what you have trapped around the ocean right now at the equator is record hot temperatures, hot water that cannot make it back north because the ocean conveyor is broken. So as long as this scenario, and that should lead to the rebuilding of the northern ice sheets. When the ocean conveyor breaks, the hot water can't go north. That causes the rebuilding, but that's not happening. You still have record low ice formations up there, and it's getting worse and worse. And it's going to continue because Earth is heating from the inside. When you read that grim report from the Russians, you'll see Earth is actually expanding because this magma displaces. I'm not kidding you. This is highly pressurized, glassy type magma in the transition zone, and when it rises up, it expands. It really expands. It's creating a bigger Earth for us. But when the black star leaves, this stuff is going to reverse. As it gets further away, it's going to have less influence.
I just want to say one of my favorite songs by Bon Jovi is "Going Down in a Blaze of Glory." We got so much going on right now, man. I'm telling you, it's incredible. And I've heard so many different things from different people, but you certainly have a good connection there. One of the things, though, that I always have I've got red flags that automatically come up. I'm just going to play devil's advocate here for a minute. When somebody tells me, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, and then aliens or an off-world faction is going to fix everything up, and it's going to be just fine because it was talked about in prophecy, or that's our version of the definition of prophecy. That, to me, is more like a carrot at the end of the stick. I almost feel like they've been kind of dangling this over our shoulder now for so long because it's something they can continue to do because it literally attaches people at the reptilian level. When I say reptilian, I'm talking about the reptilian mind where we're thinking of fight or flight. And it seems like it's every 4 years that this gets really intense. So as much as it sounds like it's going to be a global event, I wonder if there's other factions that are actually causing these events and they use this kind of as a diversion tactic. I'm not saying it's not there, but maybe they use it at specific times to do other things.
For example, CERN, like they're using CERN to create these fluctuations in the Earth, and the scalar square technology, the HARP stuff. So you think that maybe the elite are doing all this and the Planet X phenomenon is all hoax and that there's really not a black star coming and that actually men are doing all this? Is that your position?
No, my position is I'm agnostic. I certainly don't know. I've just seen enough out there to say there are other possibilities. If you've seen the film Wag the Dog, for example, they create a fake war to divert attention. And I've just noticed the patterns because I keep track of events, current events, certain articles, news, like pretty darn intense, and I have for years. And one thing that I've noticed is these cycles of every 4 years, it seems, they kind of use this specific topic And I wonder why they do that, why it's not all the time, but it seems to be on these patterns of 4 years.
Oh, I couldn't speculate on that, but what I'm showing you on the screen here is Earth magnetosphere. This right here is the bow shock. The sun is over on your right. You see the little circle in the middle? That's the sun.
What spooks me out personally, even more than the dark star that's talked about, and this is a little bit more along the lines of my research over the past 6 years at least. I used to get into this a lot more with nanotechnology, mind control combined with nanotechnologies, and it was all basically a hypothesis associated with AI interface. You know, I talk about DNA breaking down into a quad code system, how there's sacred geometry found throughout the universe, how quantum physics, there's really no finite point. It just gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And if space is infinite, then size doesn't really matter. In a sense, how could one thing be bigger than the other in infinite space? What he gets into is somebody that he actually used to work with that helped build over 200 HARP-like facilities around the world. The information he talks about with the artificial interface, the nanotechnologies combined with the chemtrails, they're not actually nano-goblins in the sense of being full-on nano-robots at first, but the way they combine with the DNA and other elements, they can essentially turn into these micro-antennas. The geoengineering of the planet, we talk about the radiation levels increasing, how and why it feels more intense on your skin when the sun reaches the skin, even though the temperatures are the same. The Anunnaki, we get in deep into the Anunnaki interface, who they are, how they've been talked about in different biblical prophecies and scriptures with different names, different terms. How Terrell also feels that over the next certain amount of years, depending on when these events absolutely do take place, in his opinion, he thinks that they will. He thinks it's going to be like the movie 2012, and California is a very bad place to be, in his opinion. Magna waves, the heliosphere shrinking, the reversing magnetosphere. What's going to happen around May 20th, 2017? Connecting numbers, earthquakes, earth changes seamlessly and efficiently. This might be the podcast that changes your mind on the possibility of a binary star that causes huge events, and many consider this being God's reset button. He also talks about where the earth change warning signs will be if you're in the U.S. and what to look for, so make sure to listen to that. Is the president of the Council of Foreign Relations actually the enforcer of U.S. control in Denver? What about the Bilderberg Group, the House of Foreign Relations, the House of Rothschild? Is the Georgia Guidestones 500 million people, no more than that at any given time on the planet of Earth, a precursor to the Black Star, Nemesis, Wormwood, Planet X, Nibiru? What's going to happen? Is it even worth living through these cataclysms? This is discussed with Terrell as well as Jay here today. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/clandestine time lord. If you become a contributing member at leakproject.com, you'll get access to exclusive content, and contributions greatly help Leak Project. Pick up a high-resolution decal today for $10 as well. High-quality vinyl. We've got several other really cool decals coming up here soon. Check them out on our website, leakproject.com. Also, check out Terrell's website once again, terrell03.com. He's also on YouTube. Just look up The Dark Star. And Jay Campbell, trtrevolution.com. The Game Changer with Testosterone Replacement Therapy. Enjoy the presentation. This is Rex Bear. Question everything and be the change you want to see.
Guys, what is going on? It is Jay Campbell from trtrevolution.com and the author of the Definitive Testosterone Replacement Therapy Manual. And of course, I'm joined by my awesome friend, Rex Bear of the Leak Project. This is the episode, Decoders of Truth, episode 14. And we're joined tonight by a very special guest. It is Terrell of Terrell03.com. And Terrell is a very, very prominent guy in the, I guess you would call it Black Star orbital passage theory of an inbound body. And we're going to let him talk a lot about that tonight. So again, we're very, very excited, both Rex and I. Terrell, how are you, buddy? Welcome to the show.
Doing very good. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So let's just get right into it. So I want, Rex and I are going to do our job of kind of going back and forth and having questions for Terrell. And Terrell, you probably know Rex interviews a lot of guys like you who have stories about Nibiru, Gerald Clark, Marshall Masters, Steve Olson, all these different guys out there. So he's, really excited to interview you. So let's just talk a little bit about your background first. How did you get into this?
I'm actually a Bible guy. I'm more of a theologian, a Bible scholar, a student, and worked with scripture for decades. Thought that would be my life's work. Wrote my book in 2005, The Mystery Explained. You can get it free at terrell03.com. And then once that was completed, the burden was on my heart to know the truth about 9/11. So that was a 5-year investigation. And then wrote that book in 2010. And you get that free also, The 9/11 Truth, Exposing the Cheney Rumsfeld Black Operation. And then Ellen and Comet was discovered. And after keywording scripture and the 9/11 Commission Report, Arden County After Action Report, then in developing these skills, then the documentation came out about the Ellen and Comet discovered December 10th, 2010. Ellen and backwards is 9/11. And the perihelion date of this supposed comet was 9/11/2011, exactly 10 years to the day after the 9/11 attacks. So I just wrote the book, and then here comes this story. So it was the documentation relating to Ellen that really got me into it. I joined 2 astronomy groups, want to know more, educate myself on astronomy more. And then Minister Armor Bostic came out with his paper to Cornell April 11th. He traced this Ellen and Comet was included in his paper that he'd been working on for a very long time. And he traced the seismic pattern going back to 1965, which obviously didn't happen because of a comet. Just so happens this celestial object, this object gravitational magnetic anomaly that I've been tracking now for the last 6 years was in Leo at the same time as the Ellen and Comet. And I believe that Ellen and Comet is a lettered agency PSYOP that they ran to desensitize people, very similar to the comet ISON. And so I've been engaged in the documentation, and then we pick up our project astronomer, Don, and worked with a large research group for years, and it just kind of grabbed me. And I'm going to be on this project until it's finally resolved. There's definitely something coming, It's causing the earth changes. It's causing everything from global warming to Jupiter's liquefying core to the volcanism you're seeing, the earthquakes, and the quake pattern that we're seeing, the magnetopause reversals that we've been having. We're predicting them now in advance because we have enough baseline data. And that's really how I got into the investigation.
So let me ask you a real quick question. So you're saying, if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying that Ellen and ISON are both PSYOPs, and they're both a cover story for the same thing, which is the inbound object, which you call.
No, I'm not saying that. Ellen passed on through. The seismic pattern continued. So the reason, the way that they use these PSYOPs is to desensitize the population. So you've heard Nibiru, Planet X, the lettered agencies are running both sides of that, and everybody's hearing it so much that they're becoming desensitized to it. So the plan is to put everybody to sleep and to make them look at Hillary and Trump and whatever's the reruns are running on the television, rather than waking up about what's coming from space.
Okay, so if I'm understanding you correctly, again, I apologize. So you're saying that Ellen was a comet, and it did pass through. So
ISON was a comet. Ellen was not a comet.
Okay,
Just try to find a picture of it.
Okay, I got you. So
right.
Ellen was this black star, but ISON was a comet.
That's right.
Okay.
But there's a lot of similarities. They were both discovered by Russians. The first hyperbolic comet discovered by a Russian was Elenin, and the second one would have been ISON, except for they ran out of time. There's a 72-hour time limit for them to get corroboration from other astronomers, and they missed it by about 2 hours of identifying this thing as a comet. So that's why it was named after the network, the ISON network. Turned out to be a dirty snowball, but James McCanney ran with that, and it was a mini solar system. If you remember, both of them were mini solar systems. If you look up the keywording for the documentation on both of them, and too many similarities for them not to be connected. And it was another desensitizing op that the lettered agencies ran. If you notice, McCanney left Planet X movement shortly after that. So he was used as a vessel for a little while, and then he, like Lucas that came before him, if you've been watching John Moore, listening to John Moore, then it was Lucas, 2011.
I remember Lucas.
Yeah.
I interviewed him back in the day.
And he was really big into it. He came to Revolution Radio where I do my work. And then he was replaced by James McCanney. And I expected them to replace McCanney with someone else, a little higher level NASA type guy. And that didn't happen. But both of those were PSYOPs used to desensitize the population in my mind.
Let me jump in real quick because I've often thought that the desensitization process started way before even 2003. Because if you play Cry Wolf long enough, eventually no one's going to believe it. Even if they do believe it, they just don't want to hear it anymore because they've heard it for so long. So, like you said, it's this desensitization process. But let me ask you this: as far as the charts and stuff that you're going to share with us here, and I had a whole bunch of earthquake reports the other day that somebody sent in. I'm talking dozens around the West Coast, all the way up into Alaska. And then you've got the Ring of Fire, obviously. Are we going to get to a point to where you think that it's going to be similar to the film 2012 on the West Coast?
Absolutely. It's going to happen. The dominoes are already stacked against the U.S. West Coast in the entire United States. After that, after Yellowstone pops, then you have lava tubes running over to the New Madrid, and New Madrid's going to pop. If you look at the Scally maps of the future, look at the Navy maps of the future, you'll see a giant hole out there where you guys live, and you're going to see there's an inland gulf from where Louisiana used to be all the way up to the Great Lakes. So the United States is going to be cut in two by what's about to happen.
I've seen those maps, and I know that even Edgar Casey had basically a vision where he was in one of his trances, and he had a similar map to the released Navy maps. And a lot of people that were in the military, higher end, top brass, etc., officers ended up moving out towards that location that's looked at as safer. And definitely you want to be at a high elevation if something like that happens. But where are we at now? I mean, are there some charts essentially that kind of show where the dark star is at? Because so many people are thinking what they take a picture of is Planet X or Nibiru or Wormwood or these multiple names, red Kachina, blue Kachina, etc.
Right, and that's a lot of the propaganda. There are no pictures of the black star. There's no pictures of the black star. You cannot photograph what is a black hole. This thing is more like a black hole than any known celestial object.
So it's like sucking stuff into another dimension?
No, I'm not going to say that. What we're dealing with is
that sounds crazy awesome.
This is a remnant body. This is our sun's much larger binary twin that burned out long time ago. And when it imploded, then it created this remnant body that comes to the inner solar system. It came to the inner solar system in the days of Noah.